welcome to the studio.
Thank you.
Will you start with a self-presentation? How would you introduce yourself?
Well, I'm someone who was a mainstream journalist a long time ago with newspapers and radio, and did this job and television. And then I became a spokesman for the British Green Party. And then I started to question the world. I started to question the norms and question the accepted truths about the world that so often go unquestioned. They're gimmies, they're just accepted. And over the last nearly 30 years, the gimmies of the world, the everyone knows that mates, have just dismantled before my eyes. And I've been a journalist. I still am a journalist, but I'm one that doesn't have an editor looking over my shoulder saying, you can't say that, you can't go there, which has been just incredibly freeing. And it's taken me into some extraordinary areas. And one of the key reasons that so many people are looking at my work now is because of what was in previous books. What I wrote about in the 90s, for instance, is now being read on the television news in changes in society, because I realized pretty quickly after I started this journey of open-minded, okay, blank sheet of paper, what gets on this piece of paper now has got to earn itself a place. It's not going to get there because everybody knows that. And things that I wrote about in the 90s that were planned for the world are now happening, and in great detail.
For example, what? What is now happening that you wrote back then?
Well, first of all, the gathering Orwellian state where everything that we do would be recorded 24/7. We've reached a point now where the manipulation has reached this level where they don't have to keep surveillance on us now. They do, but they don't have to, because people give them all the information they need. It's called Facebook. You want to have a 24/7 record of somebody's life in real time? Well, just check Facebook. And you see, one of the things that I have understood, and I go into detail in the books, which is very topical in terms of social media and Google and Silicon Valley, where I've not long come back from, is that who ultimately owns Facebook? Who ultimately owns Google? Why would the technological development arm of the Pentagon, known as DARPA, why would it have seed funded this technology that we now call personal assistants that people have in their home, the Siris and the Echoes and the Alexas? Why would they do that? And when you go down this road, you realize that if Google, Facebook, Twitter, etc., and many others did not exist, then the military intelligence network would have had to invent them, because they get everything they need from there. Take three things. One, 24/7 surveillance. That's a gimme. And you know, we have every now and again, in fact more and more, these revelations about Facebook or Twitter or somebody, and Google has let all this data go, personal data. But then you ask, well, where is it all going? And you know, the National Security Agency in America has not built an absolutely enormous complex in Utah to gather information from these sources and from emails and telephones in real time for no reason. So the military intelligence complex gets the surveillance through these Silicon Valley giants. What else does it get? Increasingly, talking about your profession, it gets increasingly control of what people see and hear. See, as these Facebooks and these Googles have reached a near monopolistic situation, they have become increasingly the dominant source from which people get their information. Now, it's not even, you know, people sitting around a desk in a newsroom saying, what do we put in the paper, what do we put in the show or not? It's done by algorithms. where information is being censored by artificial intelligence. So you get control of what people see and what people don't see. And then there's the third one, and this is absolutely crucial. People think that Google, for instance, is just a search engine, or Facebook is just a social media platform. But you go deeper into it, and these companies, among others in Silicon Valley, are at the cutting edge of artificial intelligence. And they are openly talking, and this is the most important thing people need to know now, at this minute. They're openly talking, people like Ray Kurzweil, the Google executive, of connecting the human mind, the human brain, to artificial intelligence in a period he talks about of 2030 and onwards. And what he says openly, because his sales pitch is it will make us superhuman, it won't, it will be the end of human consciousness. He openly says that we are going to be connected, brain to artificial intelligence. And as artificial intelligence becomes more and more intelligent than we are, these are his words, then human consciousness, human thought will be less and less and less of human perception until it's virtually negligible and gone. And so Silicon Valley, I call it the devil's playground, is a absolutely crucial place for people to understand because of its global perceptional manipulation qualities and potential that it has.
You yourself use Twitter, I've seen, and I do too.
Yep.
And most people who uses Twitter, Facebook, whatever, I guess use them because they feel that they get something out of it. Also, you've seen that the government of the United States and Silicon Valley have had several disputes. But do you still see? How do you see that it's connected with the American government and it has a purpose of using and manipulating?
Well, first of all, if you look at my use of Twitter and Facebook, they are absolutely limited, 99.999% of the time, to posting news items. I don't interact with it as a social media platforms. But you see, if you go deeply into the rabbit hole, you find where some of these giants came from. You see, the CIA have a company, which you can find, it's not, something that I'm pulling out of the ether, called Icke. And that's the technological seed funding arm of the CIA. And so what the CIA does, it seed funds companies and it seed funds technology that will be useful to it in its intelligence gathering, surveillance gathering ambitions. And one of the companies it seed funded, the technology that it seed funded, became what we now know as Google. And you see, if you look at Google, where something is in the search engine is basically dictating how many people see it. And there have been, again and again, increasingly recently, exposed for manipulating the search engine to keep out information that's challenging the official narrative. I'll give you an example of how it works. Just last week, Reddit had a note which came on the screen. If you were going into Reddit to try to access information challenging the official story of 9/11, you didn't go to the information, you got a note on the screen and it said, are you sure you want to see this? Because this information is now quarantined. If you really want to know basically what happened on 9/11, go to the 9/11 Commission website, which is the official story of 9/11. I'm just writing a book on 9/11. The 9/11 Commission report makes fairy tales look like reality. It's the most ludicrous explanation of what happened. But Reddit, see, if we lived in an open society and we had an internet that was open, and it once was. That's why the internet became so incredibly popular. It's why it's become a foundation of human society. Why? Because it was the free flow of information. It was uncensored. And then you had the emergence of Facebook and Google. And what did they do in the early days? Free flow of information, no censorship. But once the internet became a foundation center of human society, no getting away from it now. Once these companies became near monopolies, then suddenly the censorship starts, and it becomes a very different internet. And of course, I've just given the example of Reddit. And so when you have a situation where these companies are manipulating information, so only the official narrative gets seen by the vast majority of people, ask yourself a question: who benefits from that? The official narrative. And where does that come from? The establishment system. So they've become servants of it. I say more than servants of it. I say they're owned by it.
But can't you say that Google is just one platform to organize the internet, and the algorithms that control the searching is based on what most people want to see and have use of seeing? And if you want something that is more niche information or more a niche perspective, you also have Reddit. You have different. You can go different places, but
obviously you can't go to Reddit to find information challenging the official story of 9/11, when you should go to Reddit and find any information that's actually posted there. The point being, though, that if you are on page 1 of Google for a subject, you're going to be seen by loads of people. If you're on page 72, you're not. Now, once upon a time, I've been on the internet a long time with my website, and I've been putting out this information now for nearly 30 years. I know what the difference is. And the difference was that you rightly say what appeared up the search engine, therefore was visible, was based on what people wanted to see. And a lot of alternative information, stuff that I was putting out, was up there. But now it's not. And they have something called shadow banning. Explain this to me. Up to about 4 years ago, my Facebook page had 780,000 likes, people who wanted to hear information from it. And it was going up 3,000-4,000 a week. If you look at it today, it's about, I don't know, 750, 60,000. And gone up since. Suddenly it stopped. Like overnight, it stopped. The number of people that were seeing the stuff that I post suddenly plummeted. And it's something that's been now well documented, called ghost banning. This is how they hide the fact that they're actually censoring, by letting you post, but then the algorithms make sure it doesn't go anywhere, and the people that want to see your information do not see it.
And just to be sure, when you say they, do you talk about government? Do you talk about the company?
Well, I mean, I've been uncovering this hidden hand for a long time, and basically it works like this. You've got a spider's web. You've got the spider in the center. That's really deep in the hidden. And then you've got secret societies in the hidden coming out from the spider. And then you hit government agencies and governments and stuff like that. So if you look at the Pentagon, the people that run the Pentagon will not be ultimately the Joint Chiefs of Staff who were supposed to run the Pentagon. It won't ultimately be the Secretary of Defense. It will be deeper in the web. And you see, I've been writing for a long time now about something I call the permanent government. That's not the government that comes and goes, political parties. That's the one that's always there. And now,
is that the spider?
Yeah, but the thing is, now, well, I've just come back from America, this term, the deep state, has become almost common parlance. Well, this is what I've been writing about for nearly 30 years. I call it the permanent government. This is how it works. You look at secret societies, you look at the banking system, financial system, you look at the military, you look at the intelligence agencies, you look at the government administration, etc. And all these agencies and institutions, they're always there. You know, you have an election and another party comes in and then another party goes up. And that's changing all the time, every 4 or 5 years. But the permanent government's always there. And this is why, as I show very clearly in the books, indeed more and more people are seeing it, that when you vote for different parties, actually the fundamentals of the direction of the world never change, because those fundamental directions are being dictated by the permanent government, not the in here today, gone tomorrow politicians. But if the public can be focused upon the here today, gone tomorrow politicians as where the power is and where the decisions are really being made, then no one's looking at the permanent government that's always there, no matter who comes in and who goes out. And it's this permanent government that's controlling Facebook and Google and the Pentagon and all that stuff.
Okay, so when the thing is that in the US, the people who talks about the deep state is, among other people, the president now.
Mm-hmm.
So he is actually using some of the same ideas as you yourself talk about. So how do you see that? Do you see that as actually someone penetrating the deep state and the permanent government?
No, I don't. I mean, I think Trump was put in, like all of them are put in, for a reason, and he's using the language because he's using it to explain why so many parts of the media and agencies like the FBI appear to have it in for him. That's where his use of deep state comes from. But he is articulating something that exists, but not in the way that he's kind of describing in detail, because the deep state is there, whether Trump's in or whether Trump isn't. And what's happened, and you know, this is really, really important because of the way the world's going. People think that Trump is a renegade and a maverick, and he got there by accident, and the establishment didn't want him. But in fact, they did. The deep establishment I'm talking about, because what he's done on purpose, he's not done on purpose necessarily. He's just being him. But I mean, those that put him in, he's polarized American society, and it's now coming to Europe in a way that's just amazing to watch when you're out there. When you pull something to one further extreme, the other extreme tends to expand in the other direction. And so now American politics is not about, if it ever was, but certainly not now, about rational, mature debate and listening to all opinion and all sides. It's basically breaks down to I love Trump or I hate Trump. That's the political debate. And we're now seeing the situation in America where this so-called progressive mentality, which calls itself liberal, which isn't, thinks that mob rule and the mob mentality is the way of political discourse, and it's coming to Europe. And you know, when people say, what about the dangers of all this these populist parties coming to power in Europe? Well, what they ought to do, these progressive people who are saying that, the rise of the populists, the right, they ought to look in the mirror and find out who's causing it. Because what's been happening is that great chunks of the populations of Europe and America have actually been politically voiceless for decades and decades and decades, where the parties are basically standing for the same thing. And so many people, therefore, no matter who they vote for, their concerns are not being addressed. The reason Trump got in, very simple. He started, and I think it was very calculated, he started articulating the concerns and fears about the way society was going of this vast chunk of people in America who were not being represented by the Democrats or the Republicans because they were basically the same party. And that's why he got so much support out of nowhere. And this is what's happening in Europe. And if people don't want the rise of the right, and they don't want the rise of what are called populist parties, either side of the Atlantic, they should start listening to people and not ignoring what they say and addressing their fears instead of calling them bigots, racists, and all the rest of the abuse that now passes for political discourse.
But how was he put in? You say he was, brought to the White House by someone.
Well, if you look at how you become president of the United States, I mean, one of the great fantasies in America, which you've heard for decades and decades, of course, is that anyone can become president of the United States. No, they can't. You need cuckoo amounts of money to run for president. I mean, look at it. So Trump's biggest funder was a guy called Sheldon Adelson, who was a Las Vegas casino magnate and media owner. And, you know, he was against 16 people, Trump, for the Republican nomination. And, of course, people said, oh, he's got no chance. And we were told the Republican Party did not want Trump. But somehow, just by coincidence, he beats 16 contenders and wins the nomination, then goes against Hillary Clinton and wins that. And what happens is you get the financial and other support. And one of the great things with Trump is he was sold as this maverick, this person who was going to drain the swamp he's been swimming in all his life, by the way. And therefore, it picked up because, you know, what it is in the end, it's a psychological game. It's about the manipulation of human perception. And these guys in the shadows are expert at it. They knew there was this vast amount of people who felt disenfranchised and were frustrated and angry. And they presented a candidate which voiced their concerns, and therefore they got him in that way. You know, there are so many things that could come out about Donald Trump, as with other candidates, that if this deep state had actually wanted Trump not to get elected, then those things would have come out. But of course they didn't. So they've got the right man in, and they've created this polarization, which is just devastating America. It's a completely divided country like I've never seen before.
Okay, so we are running out of time.
Yeah,
but
I have one more question.
Yeah.
Who is the deep state? Who are the people behind?
There are many levels of it, but again, if you go back really deep into history, you can pick up a network of interbreeding families. In the ancient world, they called themselves royal, and even more recently, they call themselves royal and aristocratic. What does that mean? They think they have a special bloodline. They do think they have a special bloodline. I don't think they do, but they think they do. Anyway. And then when this network of families under different names reached the point where...
What names, for example?
Well, many different names. It's a big network, and the names change from time to time through marriage and stuff. But the point being that when eventually the human race reached a point of maturity, that it wouldn't accept rule by royal diktat anymore, by royal succession, although we still have people like, you know, the Queen of England, who's head of state just because of her bloodline. I mean, how bizarre. Then they started going into the dark suit professions. They went into politics, they went into banking, they went into corporations. And this network still runs this web, drives this web from the center. And what you see happening in terms of decision-making, political decision-making, banking and corporation decision-making in the world of the scene actually ultimately comes out of the shadows. So it's coordinated. It's one of the things that has really struck me as I've traveled around the world. I've been to nearly over 60 countries now in the last 30 years, is how you see the same things happening about the same time in countries that seem to have no connection. And it's this web that does it, because this is how it works. You think of a corporation like McDonald's. So if we have to think about McDonald's, let's think about it. And you have a headquarters in America of McDonald's, which dictates the whole McDonald's global network. You go into a McDonald's in different countries, you're basically going into the same McDonald's because it's run to the same centrally dictated blueprint. Well, this web has subwebs, if you like, in different countries. And their job is to control that country's politics, business, banking, the way society, the direction of society and the way it goes, etc. And then from this spider, this McDonald's headquarters, if you like, then the different stages of this unfolding direction that society is going into globally is played out. And the different subgroups in different countries then have the job of introducing that next stage in that country. And so suddenly, out of nowhere, the same thing is happening everywhere. And this is how it's done. And it's hidden, like I say, by people focusing in every country on the here today, gone tomorrow politicians as where the power is coming from, when really they're just the pawns in a game playing the power out. They might sign the legislation, but it doesn't actually start with them.
We are in the biggest Danish media corporation building right now. Are we also pawns in this power game?
Well, let me put it this way. I worked in newspapers, radio, television, BBC for a long time. And there were lines you couldn't cross because A, it wouldn't get broadcast or it wouldn't get in the paper. And B, if you tried to cross it too many times, then you probably wouldn't be there very long. And don't let any journalist tell me that there's not a line that they know they can't cross, even if the evidence takes them there. There'll be one or two here and there with really independent medias, but most of it works the same way. So, for instance, this polarization in America is actually being driven through the media by some media organizations being fiercely anti-Trump. I mean, no matter what he says, no matter how mild or outrageous, he always condemned. Then there's other media organizations that always support him. And so they're driving this polarization. And I tell you, when I go to America, this is an extreme example. When I go to America, I have to watch CNN for half an hour just to remind myself at how biased the media can be. It's unbelievable. When I first because the CNN we see in Europe is not necessarily the one they see in America, but when I first saw the American CNN, I thought it was a joke. You know, coming from England, where there are laws against that level of bias. So the media is very much part of it. Why? Because people's perceptions lead to people's actions. They lead to what people will do and challenge and accept or won't accept. And information dictates and forms perception. And what is the media about? Communicating information. And we're seeing more and more censorship. I mean, I'm talking to you now, but the number of times I do a mainstream interview is negligible.
Yeah, but you said it yourself. Shouldn't you be that line?
What do you mean that line?
That line you shouldn't cross in a big media corporation. Now we're talking to you.
Yeah.
Shouldn't the line then be here?
Yeah, the line should be here, but only rarely is this information discussed in the mainstream media. This is why Reddit wants to shut down questioning of 9/11. This is why increasingly Facebook and Google are admitting they're shutting this information down. Because look at what they came up with. Again, look at it. It came out of nowhere and it was suddenly everywhere. Fake news. Fake news. Suddenly, at the end, as Trump was coming into power, no one's mentioned it anymore before. And suddenly, fake news. Fake news is everywhere. You go to another country, nowhere near America, they're talking about fake news. But what is fake news the Orwellians speak for? News, information, opinion that challenges the official story. So they're using this, we've got to shut down fake news. What they mean is we've got to shut down questioning the official narrative, which is why fake news on a level that beggars belief, i.e. the 9/11 Commission report and what happened on 9/11, which is the most biggest pack of mendacity you'll ever come across in your life, I can tell you. That is the arbiter of truth, and people questioning it, that's quarantined by Reddit. This is the world we're going into, and it's a very dangerous world, because once you don't have the free flow of opinion and other information, then you are into Orwell's world, where no matter if 2 and 2 equals 4, you have to believe it equals 5. Otherwise, you're a bigot, and you're a Nazi, and you're racist.
What about, so you as a reporter, have you tried presenting some evidence that was put down because it was crossing the line?
How do you mean?
You said even if you presented evidence to back your story, it was being put down by editorial forces. Have you tried that?
Oh, absolutely, of course. My books go out, this 9/11 book, which absolutely demolishes the official story of 9/11 with absolute nothing more than fact. I mean, for 9/11 to have happened, the laws of physics had to be suspended. Do you know that the engines that were the 2 engine parts that were seen at the scene of the Pentagon and near 9/11. They said, "Oh, the engines from the plane." You know, they weren't the engines that were on the planes that left the airport. How many people know that? How many people know that there are thousands of airline pilots that came together under something called Pilots for 9/11 Truth? Thousands of engineers and architects that came together under Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth, firefighters for 9/11 Truth, academics for 9/11 Truth, who are all saying the official story makes no sense whatsoever. How many people know that? And I'll tell you this: this is very relevant to the area of topic here. I realised, because I knew what I knew before, that when 9/11 happened, I thought this is a scam. It's what I call problem, reaction, solution. You create a problem, you get the public to accept the problem and your explanation of it, and at stage 2, the reaction from the public is do something. What's going to happen? What are you going to do? You know, fear, anxiety. Do something. And then those who've covertly created the problem offer the solutions to the problems they have covertly created. All this stuff in the Middle East and the invasion of Iraq and Afghanistan, all this stuff would not have happened without 9/11. And when I looked at that when it happened, I thought this is a problem, reaction, solution. And I've watched ever since. What we're now 17 years later, I have not seen anywhere in the world, there might be one or two, but I've not seen them, certainly not in the Western world, a single mainstream documentary that has questioned the official story of 9/11. And what makes that even more staggering, lest we forget, is the very same people that told us there were weapons of mass destruction in Iraq when they knew there weren't, to justify an invasion of catastrophic consequences. They weren't just the same agencies. They were the same individuals that told us the official story of 9/11. And no one's questioned it. That's how the lie can be perpetuated through a mainstream media, whose job it should be, surely, to expose the lie.
And that's a teaser for your book. And and you're, of course, going to talk tomorrow in front of a Danish audience.
I am, yeah. I've been to Denmark a few times over the years. Very open-minded people, very open-minded country. I love coming here. I love your architecture as well. I love your station.
And what do you think the Danish audience? Just a short comment. What do you think the Danish audience are coming for to hear you?
They're coming to hear an explanation of world events and indeed reality itself that they won't get from the mainstream media. Because what I do is I connect dots. You know, you can look at pixels and what are they? What are they? But you put the pixels together and see the picture and the world looks very different. Individuals, corporations, world events, happenings, in and of themselves look a certain way. You connect them together and they look totally different. And that's what I'm going to do tomorrow night. I'm going to connect them together.
Mr. David Icke, thank you for coming.
Real pleasure. Thank you.